Japanese better, but it should be 2 pages. They look like this. Ideas for practice and practice suggestions. So, 英語得意じゃない人。4、2、3、OK。日本語、基本的には英語で頑張ってほしいですけれど、分からない時でいつでも手を挙げて、日本語が息子ほど下手くそですけれど、ダジャレが私の方が勝ち。So we'll wait just 2 or 3 more minutes for everyone to come in. If you don't have this paper, we're going to go through this ideas for practice. This is the most important one here. The practice suggestions are just あまり考えてないけれど当たり前こと。So this are obvious kinds of things. Like you want to practice when you're fresh, not when you're tired. You want to practice when you're not going to be bothering someone. And so the idea is you organize your time. You have a swab cloth, which I left down below myself, but you have a swab cloth you can constantly clean your flute with. You have a music stand, perhaps, because if you read music, that's very helpful. And if you have a pencil, you can make notes in your score. So I do all the time. I make notation in my scores almost exclusively for where I want to breathe. And if I forget one time, I write a pair of glasses in big. Watch out, John. You need to take a big breath here or you can't make the phrase, kind of things that you would write. So these are important things that you should have available when you are practicing. And that was pretty much, things like practice regularly. 15 minutes a day is better than once an hour, once a week, of course. So there was an interesting story. We have another minute before we go.
You want to grab your swab cloth downstairs?
I think they need it, and what you could do is, no, I'm okay. It's clean. Yeah. There was a fellow student who told me that his teacher said to him, if you don't touch your bamboo every day, it will crack. And I thought, it's funny. But if you touch your flute, you're more likely to blow on it a little bit, right? Instead of just touching it, right? So I thought it was very clever that he said, it will crack if you don't touch your flute every day. So you should, if at all possible, everybody's busy and they're doing lots of different things. And even me, working completely full-time on Shakuhachi, sometimes I get busy writing music. Sometimes I get busy making, and I'm not blowing very much. This is not so great. If at all possible, you should try to practice every day. Like everyone else, I was totally not good when I started playing shakuhachi. I made some funky hippie side-blown flutes out of bamboo, tropical bamboo, when I was in Hawaii. I got a book, and I was playing along with the radio, with some jazz and stuff like that. So it didn't really take me that long to make a sound out of the shakuhachi, but it surely was not a good sound. And when I very first performed in a concert, 6 months after I started, my mouth was dry, I was totally nervous. I was with 4 or 5 really old Japanese gentlemen, and here's my first performance. I had long blonde hair at the time because surfing was my main thing, and here's this blonde-haired guy with these short Japanese older men with no hair or silver hair, and man, I was nervous, and my mouth was like with cotton in it or something, give me something to drink. So everybody goes through those phases. The thing is that what worked for me is that I have a lot of perseverance and I have the ability to focus. And in the 1971, so what is it, 52 years, 53 years? My arithmetic gets completely out of whack. But in over 50 years of playing, I've only actually studied, brought an envelope to the teacher for 3 years out of 50. So if it has happened, it's because I developed a whole method of study that I am going to share with you. And so if you have any kind of appreciation for what I do, this is the kind of thing that I think you can advance and become more sufficient on whatever kind of music you want to play. Now, I'm quite famous for jazz and improvisation, but improvisation does not mean jazz. Jazz is one of the 2 high art forms in the whole world that is focused on improvisation. The other one is Indian classical music. But nevertheless, I can improvise for you right now, honkyoku. And I've performed that kind of piece in concert and had older Japanese people come up to me and say, "That was a fantastic honkyoku. What's the name of that?" And I looked at my watch and I said, "Oh, this was June 6th, 1987, or whatever the date was." And they go, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, because this is what I made up this morning or this evening or whatever." So improvisation means composing upon the instant. And if you have a feeling for the scale, if you have a feeling for the flavor, you can improvise any kind of music. And classical musicians who have facility doesn't mean that they can also improvise. This is a whole nother talent because they are not composing upon the instant, they are reading. And of course, each time they play it is different. It's not exactly the same thing, even though they have conductors and whatever. But nevertheless, it's not totally improvised. And when we play together, for instance, today I'm going to have a rehearsal with piano, bass, and drums doing some of my music. And I will play and I will improvise. And this is going to be the ideas that I will get. But I'm not going to use most of my favorite ideas. I will save those for the actual performance. So you don't want to do, when you improvise, you would want to play something that would be fresh and something that was original. Now, the idea behind what my idea for practice is that you become sufficient on the shakuhachi to take it wherever you want to go. I jokingly say, sometimes slightly irreverently, that the shakuhachi, it's a piece of bamboo, and it's really wonderful if you have an itchy back, right? and I say that even in concert, and I do things like, well, I'm explaining shakuhachi to Japanese. I say, this is the exact opposite of what should be. It should be the Japanese explaining to the foreigner. So that's opposite, right? Gyaku in Japanese. So I say, okay, I'll play opposite shakuhachi. So it's a piece of bamboo, and we and the Japanese, we are so fortunate to participate in this wonderful culture. And if you want to know more about the acoustics, because this is the sound of bamboo. I don't want to be irreverent, but this is the sound of the air column. So this is the sound of the air column and the mouthpiece, and somebody who's worked for 50 years very hard to produce not only a big sound, but a small sound too. So that's what I want you to do, is improve on the techniques and how you use your practice time so that you can more efficiently play the shakuhachi the way that you want to. Now, in the world's traditions, I come from ethnomusicology. So the shakuhachi was my special research project within the world of ethnomusicology. I studied, I don't know how many instruments, with how many teachers. So when I say I've only studied with a sensei on shakuhachi, for 3 years, that doesn't mean I haven't studied a number of different traditions with a number of different teachers, including Western trumpet, from 10 years old, and jazz drums from about 12 years old. And so I have a lot of different experience. I've played in gagaku ensemble, traditional court music of Japan, Korean, Taegum, and all kinds of different traditions, South Indian singing, Latin percussion. So a lot of different traditions, and all of this are things that you can use even if you're interested in the free rhythm meditation music only. So my idea is that you focus the time that you have, and we don't have enough time today, so I'm not going to be too over verbal, but I want to go through all these ideas. Now, this morning we did the robuki, right? And you might have noticed, it might be slightly disturbing, but when I play long tones, which I do every day that I practice, I walk around the house because I want to be loose, I want to be free, and that's just the way I practice. It's more interesting for me. You don't have to do that, but instead of just playing ro only, I'm going to suggest that you play all of the 2 basic octaves for a period of time. Now, when I really was cranking, and I would want to play at least for 5, 6, 7, I had what I call the 4-hour Band-Aid. My thumb started to hurt, and I would put a Band-Aid. It's not bleeding or anything, but there's a cushion in the regular Band-Aid. And I was so happy because I knew I was going to play 6, 7, 8, 9 hours in a day, and the thumb was the part that started to hurt. So I put the 4-hour Band-Aid on. Okay, this is going to be a good day. Now, I was a little crazy, and that's one reason I can play like I can play now. So you don't have to be that crazy, but if you use your time well, the idea is that you can progress fast. Now, in most of the traditions of the world, including the traditional Japanese Shakuhachi tradition, the teacher plays something and they say, do it like this. And then good luck and come back next week. And then you play it again. And they say, no, that wasn't quite right. Play it like this. I was the first guy at my teacher's place. The Walkman had just come out. I brought in a tape recorder. And I played it exactly as he played it, but he made a mistake there. And he said, no, that's not right. You don't use an ornament there. And I wanted to say, hey, last week you played it just like this. But fortunately, I had enough know-how that I didn't say that, and it wasn't a problem. And before I left, which was like 6 months later, he had a whole mic set up for his students because he was so impressed with my speedy advancement. He had a microphone all set up. All you had to do was...
It's an abduction alert.
Like
Amber alert.
Amber alert, like the police alert that
Okay.
goes automatically.
I think they're saying, John, don't talk so much. Let's start doing something else. It was a talk alert. Okay, so he had us bring in just the cassette tape. All he had to do was punch it into his machine instead of having to lug your whole separate recorder, because I was listening to his lesson 10 times every day. I'm in 10 different lessons, right? And so obviously I'm going to play it just like he did with the mistakes and all. But see, that's also important. You have to kind of get an idea. If you only learn something from a recording, that's better than nothing, but that's only one version of Moonlight for that particular person. And when it's a different kind of, not quite a full moon or whatever, there's flexibility on what is possible. If you put it on manner mode, it should be quiet and just give you good vibes. And
John, what did he do?
Yeah.
John, I just wanted to mention, with your timing, you might not make any difference, but there are some people in here that don't understand English.
Oh, okay. Well, I think these guys probably are more advanced, and I would like to do it in Japanese as well, but then it's twice as long. Yeah. 大体言ってる言葉が大丈夫そう。大体。大事な部分があるならば、ぜひ手を挙げて、そして 細かいの説明します。まず、long tone. Everybody played ro buki. Well, I did too. And sometimes when I had enough time, I would play the ro for 30 minutes before I went to the next octaves. But not only did I do that, I did a crescendo. I did something with the sound because I don't believe that practice makes perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. So if you have a reason for practicing something, だから、練習ならば練習ほどが完全にできるっていう表現がある。Practice makes perfect. それが本当は嘘。吹くだけじゃなくて意味があるの吹き方がとても大事と思います。So what I would like to do, this is the most important part. I have divided by 3 parts in my practice. And the first part is just the control of the sound. This is the most important. The second part is all of the kind of different techniques that are tricky and whatnot. And last but not, of course, not least, is the music. So I divided it into these kind of things: the sound, then the techniques, and then the music. And if I didn't have time for very much playing, I would just go for the sound, because the techniques, just about anybody can learn. And the music, well, shakuhachi is difficult, but if you have control over the sound, the rest is a lot easier. Now, shakuhachi is unique in that you can play in tune with a lot of power. When you blow strong, the pitch naturally goes up. And when you play softly, the pitch goes down. But if you adjust the size of the hole, and usually I do it sideways so that this edge goes level. These are more advanced techniques, but this is extremely difficult to play in tune, softly in the high octave, and in tune very loudly in the low octave. It's easier to play sharper, and it's easier to play flatter in the low octave, and sharper, lower in the high octave, and sharp in the low octave. So it's the opposite of what's natural, but with practice every day, if you do that, it's very good. Now vibrato, the kubihuri sannen kind of thing, that takes 3 years to learn how to shake your head. Well, after 53 years, I'm still shaking my head. Why am I playing this thing? But only jokingly, because I feel so blessed and I'm really happy that you are attending my workshop, and very happy to share anything I can. There are no secrets. In fact, when we start playing, I'm gonna give you a couple of little techniques that you can play the 3rd octave re more easily. You can play kan no ro without having it go to the low octave. I have a few little techniques that I worked out on my own that even advanced players it would be advantageous if they're not using those kind of techniques. So, first of all, long tones. It's not just the long sound. Pitch. If you're not in tune, and no matter how long you're playing the tone, it's not working. Volume. The shakuhachi has this tremendous dynamic range. The more you can use it, the more you can move other people's, including your own, heart. Tone, color, vibrato. Those are a little bit together, but shakuhachi is so great because it's this big open hole that's hard to play, but you can play an A flat in the low octave. You can have it like that, almost all breath, or you can play. So, how lucky are we? But it takes time and it takes practice. This didn't happen, and for instance, like the Muriiki, I have a whole set of exercises that I made up in this first section in the long tone section. So we will go into that. And then last but not least, the breath control. How long is it? If you're more efficient and you have a little tiny hole, it's easy for the sound to disappear completely. I jokingly say, I drink a lot of Coca-Cola before I play in a concert. That way, if I run out of breath, all I have to do is burp, and I have another second. So you should laugh, because this is like stupid. But I can burp, and I can swallow as well while the tone is still going, and no one knows it. I have that kind of control. So it's a little weird to be able to go, but not have the sound disappear. So in any case, what we do, I made up exercises for myself. So we're going to play not what I want you to do on your own, 4 tones each time for the open hole fingerings, for the basic rotsude and chi, ri, or chi, ha, ro, for all of the open hole fingerings from the low octave to the 3rd octave. So in 2 times each, 2 without vibrato. I mean, a lot of people use so much vibrato and then they can't not use vibrato. Make vibrato an ornament. Make it something that is conscious, that you want to do, and then 2 times with. And not only that, I am suggesting that you take a crescendo, as you see on this page. Where does the vibrato start? It starts right at the maximum intensity. Because if you add something interesting to the sound, you get a larger sound in terms of what is perceived. It may not be larger in decibels. So, こういう本当に一つの音でもが一つのストーリーが調べる、伝えられる。まず一番大きい音の時がゆりがワイドとゆっくりだんだん短く細かくそして最後はニエンテ何もない。So if you do that, if you listen to a really good jazz singer, and okay, it's improvised, and they don't have constant vibrato like the opera singers do, which I definitely don't like and don't think that it's good for the shakuhachi to imitate. So instead of going like this, I hear some people play like a famous piece for koto and shakuhachi that sounds. This is not my cup of tea. I don't like. So if you want to use a wide vibrato, okay, but how about so that you use a vibrato but very tastefully in it, and the pitch is not going like this. I listen to tenors and opera, where is the pitch? I don't know, and it's disturbing. This is not my cup of tea. So if it's your cup of tea, then you play that way. But then you practice so that it's tasty, that you like the sound. You record yourself. And if you like the opera sound on shakuhachi, then you go for it. This is, I don't determine taste. I have things that I like, and they'll come out. But let's do everybody, and I would suggest you stand. I hope you understand. And the idea is we're going to play just 1 octave. It would normally take too long to do this, but we're going to do 2 notes of ro, 2 notes of tsu, 2 notes of re. The first time, absolutely no vibrato. And we're going to start very quiet. Don't start because you have no place to go. You want to start. Okay? So we're going to start as quiet as you can. We're going to crescendo, and then we're going to diminuendo. And now most of you, when you get louder, you're going to go higher in pitch, and if you're a beginner. And when you get softer, the pitch is liable to go down. Now this is maybe beyond that, but you're going to notice that I go slightly in when I get really loud, and then I'm going to end the note about like this to bring the pitch back up, even though I'm playing very softly. Now this is not a contest, so don't worry about how long it is. If you're playing twice as slow as we are, we'll take a breath and then do another one. But then when I make a big gesture for the next note, now the next time we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to try kind of a wide vibrato in the middle, getting progressively smaller until you have nothing at all. So we're going to do a lot with 1 note. Okay, first time no vibrato on ro, but quiet to start, okay? Here we go. just slightly. Okay, now this time with vibrato and at the peak of what you think you're going to be playing. Good. Now we're going to do the same thing with two. First time, no vibrato. Okay, but we're going to start quiet, right? We don't want a nice big sound. We want to start pianissimo if we can. Good. Now this time with vibrato. Good. Now, a quick message. Vibrato and the kubi-huri should be from side to side because the up and down vibrato changes the pitch too much, I believe. And not only that, it's also convenient that when you raise the pitch, that the angle of the airstream remains the same. When you do this kind of thing, if you go, there's a variation, there's a vibrato. But if you go, now I use that technique sometimes, but it's when I want to have this wild vibrato sound, not when I normally play. And when I'm going higher, you know, without even changing this medikari kind of thing, you can change the pitch just by so it's not just the angle of the flute, it's how much of your lip is inside. So what does that mean? It's the size of the hole that changes the pitch, not the angle that you play, which of course changes the size of the hole. But interestingly, if I just play a tone, a straight tone, and this sound and this sound, this hole, acoustically they're very similar. And so when I am going to make a hole that gets constantly smaller, listen to what happens to the sound. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing, but with this hole. Same characteristic, right? Mm-hmm. Well, this hole, I mean, a trumpet is closed hole. A reed instrument is a closed hole. The air is going in and out. So the size of this hole and the size of this hole, both of them are affecting the pitch completely. So if you're playing, it's very different than playing and but somewhere in between there, you have enough to lip it down with this and this, so that you can go. And the half holing should be both 50%, well, or I don't know what the percentage is, but you need to use both this hole and the main hole to make the pitch go down and have it work better. So let's continue with re, but the vibrato that we get, the kubi-huri, should be from side to side for this reason. This is too wild in pitch, and also this is not the technique that you will use when you want to just raise the pitch a little bit. And why? Is because this angle is important. If you're going like this a little bit up, it's going to catch more of the edge tones because it's not perfectly dividing the mouthpiece level. But if you go sideways, then this angle, it remains the same, here and here. So this is better than this. So let's go to re, no vibrato, then vibrato. Good. Now one time with vibrato. Chi. Ha. Vibrato. Cardinal roll. Okay, with vibrato. Okay, very good. Now, what I'm suggesting you do every time you play, and I did it much more than that. I would spend like a half hour on row only, and then maybe 10 minutes. And so the whole thing would take me an hour. But I'm suggesting you do each note 4 times, 2 times without vibrato, and 2 times with vibrato, and you do full 2 octaves. And we're gonna go on. But before we do, and have a seat, and before we do go on, some of you had trouble sustaining the note in the middle octave. It's easy for it to go down. I have a trick in Western instruments. It's called an octave key. There are keys on the saxophone that are just for the high octave, and it works for the shakuhachi. The otsunoro point is very close to the 4th hole, and this is a pressure point. And when you have no pressure, meaning you open up the hole, the sound cannot play in the low octave. So I open the top half of the 4th hole, and it will never drop to the low octave. Or if you want to go from the low octave to the middle octave, all you have to do is play the same way, but just crack open the hole. Try it. Go, but just open the top of the 4th hole. Okay, now with the hole cracked open, now diminuendo. The sound may disappear, but you will not drop to the low octave. It's acoustically impossible. Try it again. Somebody, I'm hearing a low octave, you don't have the 4th hole opened. If I'm hearing a low octave, the 4th hole is not open. Because there is no way acoustically you can make the low octave work if the 4th hole is open. Okay? So this is a trick. My professional made wouldn't sell for any amount of money, If I have all the holes closed and I don't open that hole, it goes into the overtones. It goes into the third overtone, which is like G. Listen to this. But do I ever make that mistake? No. That's the way my flute plays, but it's always. Now, I just played a high octave daikon, it's called Re. From some of you more advanced players, it's the same kind of idea, but what I'm doing, I'm raising the Re pitch by opening the fourth hole again by like the B flat, like the Ha Hone or the Re Meri. I'm opening it just a little bit so I can play sweetly up there, like this. Now, the long tones, the reason I can play very sweetly like that and high is because I'm doing that every day. I don't have the magic lips. There's nothing special except for the way I practice. So you can practice like this too. And the high octave Re, for those of you who want to try it, just without opening it, you know, if I really punch it, it's okay. But if I go, it not only does it resonate well, but I can play it more sweetly up there. So, this hole is just slightly open. If you listen to what happens to the pitch, so it's a little bit high. So you can kind of meri, which makes the higher octave easy to play. Try it if you like. Okay, not the top. This time it's the bottom hole. The bottom of the hole.
On the bottom of it.
Yeah. Okay. So now you should be able to play Kannoro without ever having to drop the octave by opening just slightly at the top. Aoki Reibo Sensei would play the Ro and he would open up his finger like this. That doesn't work for me. It doesn't vent it out. This doesn't work. And some people open up the back hole. This is okay when you diminuendo, but the pitch goes up. But if you're diminuendoing, that way I don't have to go like this. I can raise the pitch with the back hole. So the back hole is useful for the kannoro, but don't use it when you're playing fortissimo. Only when you want the pitch to remain the same, when you pianissimo. Okay, these are kind of advanced techniques. So this is one idea. Now, David, do you have your phone with the metronome on it?
Yeah.
Yeah. What I want, what I'm going to do is focus on the breath here. Let's see, but we're only going to, what time does it finish, this class?
12:30.
12:30. Okay, we have a little bit of time, so let's go. The next one is a breath exercise. And if you use a metronome, you get the feeling of wanting to take a breath quickly. Now, maybe some of you are not so interested in the music that has a meter to it, but what we want to do is focus on that instance of breath. Not, in some kind of mystical way. Some people are quite good players, but right in the middle of their performance, they're going, and all kinds of interesting sounds. Now, Shakuhachi, it's kind of wild, and, Kogarashi is the wind rushing through the bare branches of the tree, This is a good image. But I kind of don't like too much slurping when it's not necessary. But nobody teaches or says anything about that. So what I'm asking you to do is focus on this, just the instance of the breath. So what we will do, if we have 120, if you set, okay, and if we do 120, and we have 4 bars of 120. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, breath. 1, 2, 3, 4. And so the instance that we want to go all the way to 4, and the reason I use the metronome is so that you have this feeling of having it be quick. But not only is it quick, but it has to be deep, because after 2 or 3 notes, you don't have any reserve. The first note, you're going to be okay. And then when you get into the high octave, maybe you're going to be using more breath. So you might run out. So it has to be deep and quick and clean. So those 3 are the things we want to focus on. And then it's just a simple thing. It takes like 2 minutes. And let me show you the idea, and then you just do a clap in the middle. So here you go, 2, 2, 3, 4. Here, I'm going to play it, and then you'll play with me too. So that's the idea. It's nothing extravagant, but since it's easy to play, you focus on that instance and the sound that you make, and even record yourself. And, just listening to your breathing. I've done 24 recordings, and I'm very aware of where I breathe and how I breathe. Let me tell you, sometimes I go, I ask the engineer, can we bring down that breath just a little bit, and they say no. Quite often. It's okay. Your breathing is fine. No, it isn't. But okay. So if you want to stand or sit, either way is fine. I prefer standing. Okay, here it is. 1, 2, ready, play. So it keeps going. This is a little bit of a joke, but there is later on in the technique section, it says 5 minutes of things I want to do but can't do. Circular breathing was something I wanted to do for a long time, and I worked on it, and now I use it. Not all the time, because it's natural. When you're speaking and you keep talking and talking and talking without taking a breath, it gets irritating very, very quickly. And then when is he ever going to take a breath? And when is there a pause? And it's not. So it's very natural to breathe. I was fortunate to become friends with one of the most famous Western flute players in the world, James Callway. And he played this piece called Mocho Perpetuoso with orchestra that was by Paganini and a violin player. And it goes, and I go, oh man, what are you doing there? Are you circular breathing or what? And this is back in the old days. He says, no, Johnny B. Boy. It's from Ireland. He said, no, Johnny B. Boy.
Oh, cut it.
And I said, what? You edited? He says, yeah, every 12 bars, the whole orchestra, all of us together, we played 12 bars at a time. I said, yeah, but I thought there was once or twice where I heard a breath. And he says, yeah, every once in a while, even 12 bars was too much for me. So, and when I listen to that piece, it makes me nervous because I'm waiting for him to breathe and he doesn't. So circular breathing is okay as a dramatic point in some part of it, but I don't use it even though I can make you laugh for the conlo P and have it just keep going. It's an interesting technique, but it's one that's not very natural that there are other techniques like the muraiki that I would definitely recommend that you spend a long time with. And then when you get more advanced and you feel like you would like to impress people with your Junkan Kokyu, the circular breathing, then there's lots of books on what you can do like with a straw for practice where you use the reserve in your cheeks and you cut it here, and at that instant you breathe through your nose. So that's the technique. When you have back pressure like on an oboe or a saxophone, it's actually much easier. In Australia, the didgeridoo, the basic technique is with the circular breathing and fluttering the tongue. And I can do my didgeridoo on the shakuhachi as well, but we won't do that this time. So, now, so what I'm doing, you can see the approach, yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. What do you do about spit?
Spit. I swallow.
I mean, like I get sometimes we'll be playing and we'll go down the wrong pipe when I'm taking inhalation.
Yeah,
Or
that is a
sometimes
problem.
we'll
So
go
whenever
we'll go
you
the other
can,
way and it's back through.
spend a little more time with the breath so that you have time to do that. I've had Western flute players, who gorgeous, beautiful, people asking me, well, what do you do about saliva? They would say spit, but it can be a problem. And depends on what you eat. Like I don't eat Indian food or pizza before I perform because the high salt content gets me really dry, even if, I'm not nervous. So be careful if you are performing that what you eat beforehand and understand that. If you have a completely empty stomach, that kind of doesn't work either. But if you're full, you can't take a deep breath. So be careful about what you eat, just lightly, but not too full. And at least an hour before you perform. And so it can be a problem, but also when you're thinking about it, it can be like it sort of almost generates it. Another thing that I recommend, and I have experience, is I recommend that you don't eat peanuts or cashew nuts. Because sometimes one of the little chips that gets stuck in your tooth, it gets stuck right in the middle of where you're trying to blow the shakuhachi. So I have experience with that kind of thing. But another interesting thing, I've never had a case of hiccups while I've been performing. So I'm not sure where that's coming from. But just take a little extra time for a breath whenever possible, when you're feeling like you need to swallow. And hopefully it's not in a place where you need to take a quick breath, because it could be, that might be a place in the music where there's a couple of breaths that are difficult phrases. And so maybe the first one you be very careful and don't take quite as big a breath. And then maybe the second one you have an extra time, or the music phrase ends a little better, and so, I can do it here. And then again, sort of just eating before you go on stage, you're still kind of in salivation, territory. So it's better that if you're not eating right before you go on stage. I mean, obvious things, but
I'm a drummer by trade. We tend to roll.
Yeah, I got that. I got to there. So, yeah, it's amazing, but all the vocalists have to deal with that too, So, shakuhachi and singing is very, very similar. And that also brings up the point with the circular breathing. It might be funny for you, but I've never heard somebody sing with circular breathing. I think it's impossible. But I've heard some pretty amazing things, like doing multiple, double tonguing and stuff like that while there's circular breathing. So there are some gymnastics that I haven't done because I don't think it's necessary. Yeah, okay, any other questions?
I still need my phone.
Oh, yeah, sorry about
That's
that.
alright.
I have a question. Do you
Yeah.
have any recommendations about tension?
Tension.
Particularly, let's say, second, third finger.
Yeah, yeah. What I do is that while I'm practicing, as soon as I feel any kind of pain or whatever, I relax. And I get the blood flowing, and I go, circle this, and you do with the shoulders and everything. And I don't know if you noticed, but, just standing here, if I'm standing straight, this shoulder is a little bit, I'm kind of like this permanently. Now, this doesn't seem to affect me too bad. I did too much wood chopping a few months back, and I still have some pain at 74 with, I have to be careful of what I do. So you should too. If you're feeling pain, definitely, do this. And when I exercise, I do a lot of the finger stuff like this in between while I'm waiting. If I'm doing a set of dumbbells or use a stretch cord or something like that, there's periods where you rest. And while I'm resting, I'm walking around and I'm moving the fingers like this. So I think the best kind of practice for shakuhachi is playing shakuhachi, but as soon as you're feeling some pain, the word or the phrase "no pain, no gain" is ridiculous. As soon as you feel that, then relax for a little bit, like work it out, the tension. And I do kind of marathon training when I'm practicing, where I take the Koto Shakuhachi music and put it up there, and I don't stop for 18, 20 minutes. Some of these pieces are really long. Well, I'm getting tired, and it can even affect the sound because the shakuhachi can shift easy and stuff. So I actually do that sort of training when I'm practicing really hard. But as soon as you're feeling any pain at all, and one guy was asking for recommendations and for a holistic doctor at one of the festivals. Actually, it was the first one in Boulder, and he says to the guy, I have this pain in my wrist. What should I do? And he says, you should practice like John, which is not the right thing to say. But this guy had stayed at my house, and he knew when I play in the long tones, I'm walking around. I have a dome house, and it's a big area, and I walk around. And if you only have a kitchen table that you can possibly walk around, well, be loose. Walk around a little bit. Don't just, And I also practice seiza, sitting on my feet, in the chair, and standing. Now, I don't stand, I stand more than I perform sitting on my knees, but sometimes I need to. And in kimono, I don't like the look of kimono in a chair. I prefer sitting or standing. So, but I practice all three ways that I perform. So if you're into sitting cross-legged, as long as you can have a straight back, but you go to a party and everybody's sitting around the floor and you don't want to sit on your knees and you're going to play for people and you're going to be sitting cross-legged, well, I would suggest that you practice that way too, so that it feels natural. The stage and your daily practice should not be separated. It should be the same feeling, the same posture, the same music stand. Everything should be as good as it can be because you're going to have that extra energy of adrenaline and fear that the sound is going to go away. One of the most interesting things, and I'll make this story really short, I've only been playing for about 6 months, and I'm at this friend's place, and they say, would you play for us? So the whole family gets on the couch, right? They're all sitting there, and there's this 10-year-old, and I played a slow piece on shakuhachi. Maybe it was a Tozan Honkyoko, and I've only been playing for 6 months, so I'm not very good. But I'm running out of breath very quickly. And this guy is 10 years old. After about 1 minute, he caught that I was in trouble. And so did everybody else. But this guy who was 10 started, every time he waited for me to take a breath, and then he would go, with me. oh, did I ever want to wring this guy's neck? Don't you understand? This is a difficult, sacred bamboo flute, and I'm trying my best, right? But that was the thing that I left with this guy. That was the most important, the biggest thing that I left with the guy. And then about 6 months later, I played a concert where Herbie Hancock was coming through, and this drummer for Herbie Hancock's Headhunters, this 6'6" black guy who was this funk drummer, comes up to me after this concert and says to me, he says, I'm gonna lose it. He says, my musical goal in life is to play music that's as spiritual as what you just played. And this is from a drummer, man.
Yeah.
So 6 months later, I was a better player. Not that much, but at least I didn't have anybody in the audience going, oh! every time I took a breath, to make sure that everybody knew that I was running out. Anyway, that kind of had a happy ending because then I had this other experience, I'd only been playing for about a year at that time. But 6 months and a year, you can make a big difference, So I really encourage you all to practice a lot, as much as you have time for, because especially when you're beginning, or if you can have the Zen beginner's mind, then everything is interesting. And that's sort of the idea of me dividing it up and having so many little ideas, is that you want to make each day, you don't have enough time to practice, that it's fun and that you are enjoying things. And if you do, there will be a change, and you should practice, record yourself so that you can compare, 6 months, year, all of that can really change. So, Muraiki, we aren't going to go through this too much, but I'll give you what I do. I set up an exercise. There's no exercises that anybody ever thought of that I've heard of for Muraiki. So, the idea is that you focus the breath and you kind of open up a little bit, but the more I explain it, it's kind of impossible. But you open up and maybe direct the thrashing breath sound into the flute more than standard. If you have the standard embouchure, and you try to use that embouchure for Muraiki, you're only getting air. But if you open up a little bit more, okay, now what I do, I have an exercise 4 times for the 2 octaves. Each note, you start with a sforzando, because it's really cool to have a big thrashing breath, but then have the note continue, so that you can go with like this. Now my embouchure here is way different than, it's night and day. So if you practice this, if you go, and then I add a little bit more, maybe 30% of my breath. Okay, and then 4 times, so maybe the 4th time it's like, 70, 80% of the breath. But still end with the natural tone. And the last one, you use only the Muraiki sound. And that's it. That's how much breath I have. But if when you start, you're gonna go. And I just taught a class in China recently, and there's this girl, and she plays like this. And every time she's trying, she goes. It's not happening. Then everybody around her is just honking away. And then all of a sudden she went, and her eyes went like this, and she got it, So all it takes is a little bit of serendipity, or I'm not getting the right word, but all it takes is a little luck to get the right kind of flavor. But the fact is if you don't do it, it'll never happen. And so the idea when I started, and I'll tell you about the 5 minutes of things that I want to do and can't do, that's one of them. But I thought the Muraiki was so uniquely Shakuhachi-ish, and that everybody would want to play it. I used it in the first, the breath and the control of the tone. And then the things, 5 minutes of things I want to do but can't do, a lot of you might like to do koro koro, or flutter tonguing with the throat. You can use the tongue, which is why it's called flutter tonguing, but it's a little heavy. I mean, I can do minuano while I'm flutter tonguing, So, but that's with the throat. So all of these are techniques that, if we're the next one, 5 minutes of things that I want to do but can't. Add that to your daily practice every day. I'm going to do that. Yeah.
What is Muraiki translated?
It's thrashing breath, generally speaking. Thrashing, wild breath. And, there's fingerings you can do. Quite often, if you're in the low octave, you get the deepest kind of thing. But I'm asking you to do this exercise 4 times open, hold fingerings for 2 octaves. So chi, ha. So you practice. There's times when it's good with the high octave as well, but is also with the low breath. But then you go to the higher note, which is why I'm suggesting that instead of just thrashing breath in the end, that you continue with the tone 4 times, each time using more progressively that you're doing the thrashing breath. Now maybe 1 or 2 weeks, you're still not there. But when I was teaching long ago, I'm not teaching anymore, but people would often say, "Oh, you should have heard me play last Wednesday night." It was sounding really good. I go, "Yeah, I would like today to be Wednesday night, but it's not. It's Thursday afternoon, and you don't sound so great." No, I didn't say that, but nevertheless, it's really difficult to explain. The lips have to understand. And you, like this woman, she never played it ever, and she was having a lot of trouble. And all of a sudden, it was, and her eyes, man, they just popped wide open, and she got this big smile. And of course, then she couldn't make a sound, right? I said, trouble is, don't smile after you make a good sound, But nevertheless, if you do it, it's possible. YDK is my theme song. YDK is Yariba Dekiru. It means if you do it, it's possible. And so that's what I'm asking you to do, is to incorporate this in your practice. So 5 minutes of things I want to do but can't. Scales, a scale doesn't mean a Western scale. There's Japanese scales. And you may know that there's an in sempo, but it's not only there, it's or here, or here, and then the octave again. And do you know that there's a changing tone on the way up and a changing tone on the way down? So if you ever play Rokudan, you hear there's a changing tone. So there's a 5-tone scale, but there's one note different on the way up. It's closer to the tonic, and on the way down, it's closer to the 5th. And most of you know that the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. It's a half step that up that is the natural tendency for diatonic Western music. But in Shakuhachi, it's a half step above for the traditional in sempo. So the scale going down, it starts with the tonic, and then it goes a half step above the 5th, which is the second most important note. So it goes. So this is the characteristic of the in sempo, which is the honkyoku and pieces like Sakura Sakura and Kojo no Tsuki. All of these are found in popular kind of folk song pieces. And then the other one is the folk scale of Japan, which starts with the ro. So it's very happy sounding. There's no half steps. So it is very unique. And one thing that's quite interesting is that you still have that minor third for the second note. But if you start on the second note of the shakuhachi and play to the scale, this is the Chinese pentatonic folk scale. And so 1, 2, 3, instead of very different flavor where you're going to the minor third and the fourth. If you go a lot of the Japanese folk songs, kid songs sound like that. Or Western music songs also go with one pentatonic. So it's a very useful scale, and it's really easy to play. And then you can play lots of. This is simply. So every day I say, we play scales. We'll go. The problem with the Japanese tradition is that the teacher only teaches you things that's written down, and this is what you only play the lesson music. But the shakuhachi, man, it lends itself with all kinds of songs, So there's all kinds of things that are available if you know tonguing and you know a few of the diatonic scales that work, especially without the full half-all with the chumeri. And then you have lots of music that's available. So scales, tonguing, I just use there's no tonguing in traditional Japanese music. So there are no short staccato notes that are repeated. So you don't go. In the Koto Shakuhachi music, you go. You flip a finger, which is a nice kind of ornament, rather than using the breath. But you can tastefully. Then I'm going do 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 very gently with the tongue, and more staccato. If you're ever going to play tonguing, you should practice it. And then double tonguing, triple tonguing. Anyway, I like to play Night Train, so I can go choo, 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 with triple tongue on the shakuhachi. You can get a nice. So anyway, there's a lot of.
Are you using the same consonant always?
It's tuku to tuku, generally speaking, and taka taka is very easy to say. Yeah. In Indian percussion, they use, like for triplets, they use takita, takita taka, takita taka demi. But takita taka is that's 5, but tuku, tuku, like tuku, 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 and then tuku, tu. So you use two of the twos, and it's generally used in Western terminology. Tuku, tuku, tuku. Yeah.
What about Western flute vibrato?
Western flute, if as long as you're aware of it, it's fine. I prefer the shakuhachi head shaking because it is not Western vibrato. But there are some players, you know, who want to play, you know, beautiful. I still want to use the head, but.
Yeah. How do you practice the head for a
lot.
beginner? Yeah.
So start with the long tones and feel because it is weird. It's not natural, and get some of the back and forth, and then you will sound less like a flute and more like a shakuhachi if you employ that. And so then also I prefer a lot of flat things so that, you know, if you're going is not quite as good, especially when the notes are shorter. I don't like the sound. Scale. So I use a sequence in whole tones that works for the shakuhachi. So you kind of take it out, and then you go back to sort of a pentatonic summertime. Or I do, sometimes. Like that. Yeah.
Any thoughts on maintaining breath support while you're doing vibrato? I frequently find myself like starting to lose proper breath support when I'm doing.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's kind of like multitasking. Some people are more aware of it. The thing is that's why I divide it up. Like the breath exercise is not part of the long tone exercise. It's separate to it, so that you can kind of focus on individual parts. But when you do that every day, then there's a carryover. So the thing is if you seem to be running out of breath when you want to continue the vibrato, well, like I said before, drink a lot of Coca-Cola. No, I'm joking. If you make a smaller hole, you use less breath, but you're liable for the sound to either get very fuzzy or disappear completely. So making a smaller hole for a diminuendo, and as well as opening it up, this is what is very difficult. And so when I just ended up Mozart's second movement for a flute and harp concerto, and I ended on that high chi, I don't think you heard it going da, even though I ended it with a nice diminuendo. It's not easy, and so that's why I practice every day the long tones. Yeah, and that should carry over, in spite of thinking about it. You know, the thing is your body has to remember things. Now, just going very quickly, the last part. Trills, you know, there's the back hole and the ring finger on the second hole. People are quite often, so you know, practice practice all the fingerings, the trills, you know, so that they work naturally. If you only see it in a piece, you know, even the muraiki, you know, if you play honshirabe, right, and you have muraiki 2 or 3 times in this 5-minute piece, or however long it is, and you can, you know, it's going to take you 2 or 3 hours of repeating this same piece to get the same amount of practice that you can get in 3 minutes in the muraiki exercise. So the idea is that you focus on those things that you want, and then when the technique is developed and your muscles remember it, then they work naturally in the music. Is the idea. So, case in point, maybe where you're feeling like you're running out of breath when you're focusing more on the vibrato kind of thing, we'll take a really big breath before you get to that phrase where you want to feature the vibrato a little more. Yeah. Awareness. So extended range. I showed you how to play the daikon rei. There's another note up above there. It's a B flat on a 1.8, and if you have the second hole and the fourth hole only closed, almost everybody here, even if you're pretty much a beginner, can play, which is a pretty high note. So it seems to work on almost every shakuhachi. Number 2 and 4, it's a strange fingering. It's not found in any music. Oh, I play it in my improvisation for summertime, but I also play 4 octaves of the ro. So, so, and then I don't play every single note in between. The F is really notoriously difficult on a 1/8, but if you use the B flat, you can kind of squeak it out. It doesn't work real well on this flute, but it's the 5th overtone of a B flat. So if you use a B flat fingering, usually just the first hole. This is the B flat fingering, and the back hole is closed. This is sometimes people actually half hole with the leg to get the right pitch. But I've jammed my flute into my mouth, and it's not fun. Yeah, so there's a lot of notes. So in terms of the music, then the lesson, you know, you focus on the problems, but not only from the beginning, but from the middle and the end. And, you know, check it out. And if you can read Western music, you have tons and tons of flute stuff you can play. Play along with the tape or CD. What I'm suggesting is that you play more music that you might want to play that's not your lesson music. Sight reading, I used to read Charlie Parker transcriptions. He's going to 230 mm, and I'm going about 60. He's going, and I'm going, but they're nice phrases, and I'm sight reading. It's like 300 pages of transcription of Charlie Parker improvisations. And so every day I do a different page. And by the time I get through 300 pages, I've forgotten the first parts. And although he has some phrases that are similar, still it's like sight reading all over again. So one book, and I got 2 or 3 years of sight reading practice. You know? So there's a lot of things. Whenever possible, you know, I hear some people that are quite good. Whenever possible, memorize the music that you play. The written score is black ink on paper to help remember where you go. You're making the music. So especially, you know, you should be able to play Itsuki no Komori Uta or Kojo no Tsuki or Sakura Sakura without, oh, sorry, sensei, let me get my score. And, you know, he's been playing for 10 years and he can't go. I have a book that I wrote with Tozan and Western score, Itsuki no Komorioto, Kojo no Tsuki, Sakura Sakura. I have 3 or 4 really famous pieces that every Japanese would know, And you should, all of you, have all of that kind of thing as part of what you can play without the music. So I highly recommend. Now some of the longer pieces, like the Jiyuta, Yaigoromo and Godan Ginuta, there's these pieces that are 15, 20 minutes, and they aren't interesting enough for me to memorize it. But I'll tell you what, I was playing with a professor at the university as a lecture demonstration, and we were playing Rokudan no Shirabe. And his music was all, the pages weren't in order, and we didn't stop. We were both able to improvise until he was able to arrange with one hand his score, and then I saw when he was ready to come back, and I knew what we could do. So the students knew that something funny was happening because he's doing something with his score while we're still performing, but no one knew that we didn't stop where we just totally improvised in the Rokudan, flavor. So you should have it, yes. Time.
Past 12:30.
Past 12:30. So record yourself and your lesson, of course, and make chances to and perform with others. If you have a party you're going to, take your food and play for people. It might be noisy. Go someplace in the back and say, look, I've been working on this piece. You want to check it out? And most of the time they're going to say, yeah. But don't invite the 10-year-old who's going to breathe with you. That's better.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm David. I'm John's son. You can probably tell.
Oh, hi, David.
Hello. I just wanted to say that I made a documentary film, a feature-length documentary film about my dad and his music, and it's called Words Can't Go There. And I would love for you all to see it. I'm gonna maybe try and play the trailer right now, just before if you guys want to leave, go for it. But
I
just
tried to
gotta-
find that online, but I couldn't. Is it for purchase?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll play it if you want to stay and watch it. Great. If not, no worries. But I just wanted to say that. So.